If you are a visual storyteller, if you are a content creator, then you might have aspirations of becoming a filmmaker. In fact, those two worlds, the lines between them are becoming quite blurred. However, the path forward in either of those, in trying to secure a long-term career in those fields, is still unpredictable and unreliable. So what do you do when this is a career path that you want? How do you build something and establish a business that stands the test of time? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab. This is episode 198. Today, my guests are Kristi Ray and Erika Arlee from Honeyhead Films out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, I have a great story here. I am a filmmaker, as you may or may not know, and you probably don't know that I also have some rental properties, some Airbnb short-term rentals in the state of North Carolina. One in particular that I used to live in, the first house I bought when I was young in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I love that old craftsman bungalow. It's like 120 years old, but now it is a full-time short-term rental. We get all kinds of great people visiting UNC or Duke or whatever they're doing in this area. However, a few months ago, I got a stay from some other filmmakers who were screening at the Carborough Film Festival. Now, I know the folks who run that festival. I've had some films in that festival before myself. So I was like, oh, that's super cool. We're in this, same industry. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. And wanted to go see their film, but unfortunately, I was not able to make it. So since then, I looked them up and I was like, oh my gosh, we know all of the same people. Hey, I've heard of these girls at Honeyhead Films. They're doing incredible work. Now, they have just secured distribution for their debut feature film. And when I met them, they were on the screening tour for this film called A Song for Imogene. Very Southern story, great performances by the actors, many of whom which weren't, it was like their first role or they haven't had a lot of roles. Great writing, very subtle, a little bit about domestic violence and grief and just hardship that a lot of us can identify with. So well done. I'm so excited by and inspired by the work that they are doing. But once I dove in and looked at the work they had been doing, I was like, oh my God, like I got to have these girls on the show. Like, they understand the brand they have built with Honeyhead Films is so strong, and they kind of deflected when I brought that up. They kind of downplayed it when we talked about that, but I was like, no, you've been running this production company for 10 years, and when I go to it, it's very clear what you stand for, your core values, who you are creating films for, who you are creating films by. And most of that is women filmmakers. They're trying to give voices to women, especially Southern women. They have workshops like Shoot Like a Girl, where they teach high schoolers how to produce and direct films. They tell stories like A Song for Imogene, and they have been doing this for a long, long time. And what impresses me most is they do client work, but they have built a business, not like, oh, I go do these things with my video camera, corporate work, et cetera, that I may not be passionate about. And then I go try to make my films, my creative films in my free time. They have built a film production company based on their passion. First and foremost, that is the centerpiece. That is the foundation. And they also do other things, but only within that space. And because of that, that's what they're known for. So if you are a type of person who wants to build a business, build a brand based off of your passion, not just the work you can do with your skills and knowledge. Like when they started out, they were doing wedding videos and things like that. I did the same thing. That's a similar path. But when you get to a certain point, you don't want to have to do anything other than what lights your heart on fire, the stories that you feel you were put on this earth to tell. And they understood that at a very early stage of building that business, and that is why that business continues to thrive. A Song for Imogene comes out this week, Thursday or Friday, I think, on Amazon Prime. You got to see it, especially if you are someone who wants to tell stories. If you are a visual storyteller, there is going to be so much inspiration that you'll find in their story producing this film and in their story creating and building their brand, their film production business. So here's my conversation with Kristi Ray and Erika Arlee, and I hope that you love it. Kristi, Erika, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm excited to have you both here. I want to go ahead and jump in. I watched the film. I've got a lot to say about it and a lot to ask about it. But I think that the first question I think that most people are interested in more than anything else is, when you're touring this film, out of all the places that you stayed, where was your favorite?
We were talking about this yesterday. Do you have a favorite?
Wait, be careful with your answer here, ladies.
I mean, I have a couple favorites. I'll just
This is a leading question, but if you had to choose maybe a particular Airbnb or hotel that you stayed at, what might that be?
The last one we stayed in, which was in Carborough, it was so amazing. This cool historic house that, the only thing that was kind of weird was I think that your wardrobe is haunted. I have an infant daughter who was like waving at the closet, like sitting up in bed at night, like looking over at it. And I had to go shut those curtains. I was wondering why they were there, if it was a reason, if like looking into that mirror was going to steal my soul or something. I'm kind of kidding, but no, really, we loved that house. That was so cozy. We turned on the fire. It was snowing when we were there. Wasn't it snowing?
Or had just, yeah. I think it had just.
I'm glad you used the gas logs. For anybody listening that might be confused, the way we originally met, although I feel like we should have met already with all of our mutual filmmaking friends in North Carolina, was I had a couple of filmmakers on a screening tour stay at my Airbnb in Chapel Hill. And these are the two guests of today. So what a crazy coincidence, but I don't know. I cracked up when that happened.
It's awesome. Awesome,
maybe
small town connections.
Absolutely. So sticking along with the film festival circuit, since y'all answered that so honestly, I appreciate that. But I am curious, for this day and age of filmmaker, what role do you think that the festival circuit plays? Did you get what you hoped out of it? Because obviously it's the changing landscape, and what they used to be isn't necessarily what they are now. What's your experience as a filmmaker? What role do you think that they play in our journeys these days?
Wow. I mean, I think every time that I feel like we closed a Q&A, or most times, and they said anything else, I would always try to thank the festivals for what they're doing for independent filmmakers, because you have like the top 5, you have the big ones like the Sundance and the South by, and Tribeca and Toronto and Berlin and Cannes and all the big festivals, but they're really a place for I feel like for Hollywood to come celebrate their independent cinema in a certain way, and for the truly, truly independent filmmakers that are trying to break into the industry and showcase their calling card films. I feel like these other regional festivals that are still excellent, and the programming is incredible, and what you see in those festivals is amazing cinema. But I feel like they're really the ones taking up the mantle as far as pushing out truly independent original cinema at this point, that doesn't necessarily have ties to anything going on in Los Angeles. So that's something that I feel like is really important with festivals now.
Yeah, and I would say that as we were touring the film, it was a long run. We started in about a year ago, or 2 years ago today, January 15th, I think, was our world premiere, 2023. And I think Carborough was our last film festival. I feel like that was the last one. So almost a year and a half or more. And on that journey, we were really fortunate to meet people, like Erika said earlier, in places like Atlanta and Oxford, and, reconnect with some of the same people throughout the Southern Circuit. What you come to realize is all the programmers know each other, and they're championing your work. They're cheering you on. Even if you don't get into a festival, there are people that are going to be recommending your film to other programmers. And so, rejection can be kind of hard. I think our ratio was like 3-to-1 rejection to acceptance. And we had a really awesome festival run, but I was looking at the stats the other day and there were like 37 festivals we didn't even get into. But I feel like the ones that we did meant so much for us, not just for audience building, and getting our work out to people in our regional reach, that are going to follow our future work as well as filmmakers, but also meeting investors and fellow producers who have now come on to our next project that we're in the development and packaging stage for. And that's the best thing you can hope for as an indie filmmaker, is that your work is going to get out there. It's going to become what we call our calling card film, and that you're going to be able to prove your worth to people and build connections that help take you as you're scaling, your company or your vision, and open doors that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do on your first time out. So it's a huge
Well
tool.
said.
I think it's like incredibly difficult to imagine self-distributing a project or something without any kind of buzz that you haven't, like, it's just your friends and family that know about, and the crew, right, that know about the project. So
Yeah.
it's really important to get out there in the world. And I recommend the smaller festivals. I think that the hospitality is like through the roof. They're going to be excited that you're there, and you'll have a memorable experience, and you'll be memorable to the people there, right? So it's not just about trying to get into, Cannes or something like that. I think that that's like sure, like it's like a nice goal, but it shouldn't be like any kind of like a litmus test of like how good your work is if you don't make it into one of the top festivals, because the chances there are like one in a million, or 1 in 26,000 or something like really crazy like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's so much about just being out there, just being with people in the community, right? I mean, and we're kind of at this weird time where the theaters are struggling. People aren't going to see movies as much, but I mean, I'm sure you all agree, at least for me, being in person, seeing people's reactions, talking to them afterwards, hearing their stories that they related to because of it, is so much a part of that storytelling journey, that even if all the other things you just illustrated that came from the festival didn't happen, I think just establishing those connections. I really like the point that you mentioned about it, almost being a calling card for the future projects.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, historically, I feel like, and I'm generalizing here, that people go to festivals hoping that it might like be the thing that does it for us, or they sell their film, they get an investor, things like that. And it can still happen, as you just mentioned. I know you all have the films coming out soon on Amazon Prime. You got a distribution deal, so obviously those things can still work. Did that come directly from the festival circuit and the people that you met, or was that kind of outside of that path for you all?
That was outside of the path. I mean, it technically was. We had a producer's rep working with us, who went out to a list of folks to query the film with them, and our distributor Buffalo 8 was on that list. Interestingly, I feel like we did get offers though while we were on the film circuit. So part of me wonders, how you always can think of like what path would the story have taken if you had made one choice or another, So who's to say, we probably still would have moved forward with the distributor, even if we didn't have a producer's rep who was bringing the film out for us. So that was just a path we chose going in to the festival circuit. But I mean, it really does make a difference, because as soon as you start getting a few of those wins and programmers are talking about it, and there are festivals like City of Angels, the Women's Film Festival in Los Angeles, where we played and we won Best Narrative there. And part of what you win is a meeting with a distribution company called Shout Studios this past year. So we got to meet with them, and we had already secured our distribution deal at that point.
I think
but
they were
it was
kind of disappointed. Yeah, they were excited to maybe scoop up the movie and loved it, but we had already signed, we'd inked our deal.
So I think that the festival circuit can definitely lead to those types of connections for filmmakers. We were just a little bit ahead of the 8 ball as far as getting our film out to viewers and people to look at it before we really embarked on our full festival run.
We definitely had an exit strategy, and not all indie filmmakers do, and that's okay
Right.
too. I think what we what we realized on the festival circuit is that maybe what Erika's trying to say is like we were a little premature, and maybe we could have gone without even having that extra person, you know, who comes with a commission and things like that on our team
Sure.
to sell the film, because we were approached by a similar echelon of distributors on the run. And yeah, I'd be curious to see what would happen if we could do a redo, but I don't know. You know, this whole entire process has been such a learning experience. And part of like why we love having podcasts with people like you, and, you know, we have our own podcast as well, where we just break down all of those kind of opaque barriers that first-time filmmakers are going to be navigating, you know, or second-time filmmakers or whatever, just in the indie space. We want to help illuminate all the things that we've learned throughout making this process or this project for the last, I mean, it's been almost like 10 years. We've been working on the film in one way or another from its like very first genesis moment. It was a short film, you know, in 2015. Erika wrote the script. It was like a 7-page short film. So it's been a long journey, but we're always happy to lift the veil and help other people hopefully get where we're going a little quicker than we did, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Thinking of all the people that it requires, which, you know, could be a rep like you all had, obviously the people who work on the crew. I'm really intrigued by the collaboration between you two. The dynamic seems really strong, for lack of a better word. And I know you all have worked together for a long time. I know you've got kind of a cool origin story, but I want to talk about the art of collaboration, especially in this medium, specifically how you all work together. Erika, this was your first feature directing,
Mm-hmm.
is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, like how you all handle this in your company, but also we can maybe expand to just the role that collaboration plays and how to approach that, especially from an indie perspective, right? When you're trying to build something like this. But I'm really interested in how you both view your collaboration together. It's obviously producing and yielding really positive things, which is exciting to see.
It's interesting because when we get so many young aspiring filmmakers asking us like, how do I make my film? That's a big reason why we started our podcast, and talking about it is trying to just like put it out there, you know. And we started doing workshops that reverse engineered how we made a song for Imogene. It's called Hindsight. And we started teaching that at universities and other workshops with festivals, because we just had such a huge amount of inquiry after we premiered Imogene, and even while we were making it, of people wondering. And I always, if I'm ever talking to someone who's but who is a writer, director, kind of solopreneuring out there in the world of film, you need to find somebody. You need to like find basically your Kristi, because Kristi is an amazing producer. She's also an incredible actress, which you saw in the film. And so the fact that there is like a dynamic there where we can push work forward, using our different skill sets, really makes it a lot less daunting, I guess, to get into the world of independent filmmaking, because you're wearing so many hats. You kind of have to be good at a little bit of everything to really push work forward, especially your first time out, because the industry is a little bit shy around first-time writer-directors, as far as investment and, you know, just resources and things like that. So I think collaboration is a big part of it. You know, we always tell people, you have to find your hive and go build your hive.
I think the dynamic duo energy is real. And even just listening to you, I'm like having a new thought right now, because people ask this question and I'm like, but why does it really work? Like, why does it work for us?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, what if I was just a producer and I wasn't part of a production company, and I'm out there looking for my Erika, like who's got a script and I want to help make it happen. I think that can work for people, but I think what makes it exceptional and like work really well is that Erika and I, everything that we're doing together as a team is building into a collective brand. And like the machine of Honeyhead, we both have so much skin in the game that there's a lot of unpaid sweat equity that goes into something like this. And because we're both working for the same end goal, even when there's burnout or there's friction, it's like we're always coming back to like, we're doing this for both of us. This is like our baby that we're growing, and it's like we're parents. We're parenting like a child, and now she's like 10 years old. Honeyhead is like moving on into like the 5th grade soon,
and be a teenager.
It's getting crazy, you know, but it's like you can't just walk away from each other in this way that like one-off producer, director, you know, you just like pair up for one project. You might need like a lot of financing at the table to be able to incentivize somebody to like come live your dream with you, you know? And so I will be really, really candid with you that this being our first film, and it was like crowdfunded and micro budget, we only spent $200,000 on the whole project. There was a lot of unpaid development labor that just went into getting it off the ground for years. But Erika and I were able to do that while still floating our company and having the same goals in mind. So it's part of like, I think, just something I never really put my finger on out loud to people. But do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, because we knew that Honeyhead would always be the vehicle and we put all our eggs in that basket, we're just kind of like both good at different things that are like helping move that machine along. I guess that's what I'm like reflecting on live with you here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate you being candid. That's what I love, and I think it's evident in the brand that you all are building. I love the parenting metaphor as well, because like, can you do it alone? Yeah. Is it significantly harder? Yes. Does it make it better when you have someone that you trust, you can depend on? And as you said, you both have the same end goal. 1,000%. I mean, absolutely. And so I think that is honestly a really good metaphor for it. And collaboration can be tricky at times, just like parenting, just like co-parenting. But it helps. And this is this sentiment of like, find your Erika, find your Kristi, find your, you know, your community is so important. It's what everybody says, but not in a cliche way. It's because it's the truth, right? Like, you have to have that community of creators and collaborators that you want to build with. It's so important. I appreciate y'all sharing that. I know this is important to you all. It's important to me too, thinking about first-time filmmakers. And I think that with the growth of like content creation and people now having more tools to at least put their visual stories out there, I think there's and even with the filmmaking world kind of being like upside down perhaps at the moment, that might be too strong of a word. There's still people that want to enter this space, that want to tell stories, that want to make films, which is really exciting, right? So if I'd love to break down a little bit, like just how you all pulled it off in terms of, you mentioned you crowdfunded a little bit. You mentioned, you know, you raised this much money, sweat equity, all the things. You said that basically it's been a 10-year journey, which might sound daunting to some folks, but it's very much par for the course. I mean, in terms of like the seed of the idea to distribution. I mean, to me, I have lived that too, so I understand it. Can you walk us through like the execution of this project? I know you said it started as a short, but like, for someone who's out there is like, yeah, but how do I make this happen? I've got my Erika, I've got my Kristi, we've got an idea. Now what?
Yeah. The first thing that comes in mind is like, who is your audience and do they care? Like, who are you making this movie for besides yourself? It should always be, you know, a creative venture and something you want to get off your chest. But I think something that helped with the success of this and the momentum and the kind of like community buy-in that made Imogene successful was that there were a hive and a community of people who were already rooting for us. They didn't really care what movie it was that we were going to make. They were just excited that we were finally going to do it. And that comes from like years of investing in that community. And so the first step, like, you can start today or, you know, 3 years ago, building your community and doing it authentically. That's the first thing we tell people, is that you can't sleep on that, because those are your resources when you don't have the funds to pay full rates, right? Those are your resources for equipment, for locations, your vendors, your crew, you know, your wardrobe, like all that's going to come from your community on a really micro budget indie level. And that's not something you can just come up with overnight. You can't just like build a following of people who are genuinely enthusiastic and excited about what you're doing. And I think part of what makes our community so invested in us emotionally is that we show up authentically for them. And we've always done that from day one. And so there's not this kind of like facade of like we have it all figured out. We're pretty candid with people and with, you know, even the people we hire and we like bring into our space and our creative space, they're on the same level as us. It's like there's like a mutual trust there. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I like what you said about finding your audience for what you're doing. We always like to compare making a film to a startup. I mean, it's basically the same mentality. You're going out there, you're pitching a new concept. You're getting people who are, you know, angel investors or venture capitalists involved. They're okay with a high risk investment. You know, they want to see you, they care about you as the entrepreneur and what you're creating as something new, where there's maybe a gap in the market for what you're creating. And then the idea is that eventually you'll sell it. There will be a recoupment process, and then you might take your investors on to the next project, or they might go on to something else. So it's kind of like very much similar to that. So we always want people to think about your film. You're a creative, but you're also a business person when you're making a film. And so we made the short film without thinking it would become a feature film. And then based on the festival reception and people wanting to know more about the sisters that we had presented in the short film version of this, we realized that there was an audience for the story. So that was a big part of it, was a big part that pushed us over the edge, because we had written collectively like 2 other features that we thought we might make our first feature. Like they had all kind of died on page 60. For any of your listeners who know about writing screenplays, it's like they kind of died.
They just were like, really long short films. They wanted to
like, yeah, they kind of just died like, you know, in like the dregs of Act 2, you know what I mean? And that sort of thing. So, they could have just been really good shorts, you know? And I think what we realized is that we were trying to write something that we thought would be maybe marketable in genre, but where we had really found our audience and where our audience had proven to be and where there had proven to be a gap was with these authentic female Southern sisters, you know what I mean? So, and that was really truly as a brand, the film that we were set up to make as well. And the film we were set up to champion. And it was a highly personal story for both Kristi and myself. So I think that was probably why it was a little harder to write. But at the end of the day, it was the right choice, and that has been proven time and again as we've taken it on the festival circuit and now moving into distribution.
I think about the personal angle and you saying it was difficult to write because it was cathartic, right? And we're both like healing from experiences that are seen on screen. So if you get the chance to watch the film on Amazon, just know that Erika or myself have been through everything that Cheyenne and Janelle have gone through in this way. And while it made it difficult to write and produce it, because it's like raw, it made it easy to make all the right creative decisions. I think it was like a safe space for us to create the story, because it's like, I think about all the creative trickle down decisions that were made either from an actor perspective or a director perspective or in the edit or something. And it's like the movie just feels right. And it's like we just knew it like the back of our hand in this way. And like the setting is so familiar. It's like it's based in real places that she and I grew up in, you know, or your mom in Little Washington. We were talking about that earlier. I grew up in New Bern or right outside of it. So just these like, you know, it's like we knew these women, we knew these places, we knew these homes. So everything just came out of us so authentically and kind of like in a way effortlessly, like the creative part. And that was fun for us. That's the fun part. Making a movie is really hard, but it's good that we, you know, had things that like just came really naturally to us, because there's like a lot of burnout that can happen, you know, putting the film through. I mean, production is so energizing. That's definitely like, I mean, it's hard, and you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, I need to go to the mountains for a week and just like reset. But, you know, development, financing, and post and distribution, man, it's hard. People don't talk about that. It is hard. It's hard work. Even getting a deal, it's like, yeah, we got a deal. Now it's like still up to us to get the film out to the world. So thank you for helping us promote the movie. You know, all this grassroots marketing really helps.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like I don't know if we've fully answered your question. It's such a loaded question. I'm trying to kind of go back to
breakdown. You'd mentioned crowdfunding. Our budget partially came from crowdfunding, and it also came from 2 equity investors who came in to help bridge the gap and make up the budget. So we did have kind of a hybrid model. So I don't want people to think that we went out and crowdfunded the entire production budget for our film. I think that would be really, really challenging. But the momentum of the crowdfunding campaign attracted our investors.
Yeah.
So they worked together in this way, which was really nice. And then we had a lot of in-kind donations that came to the forefront to make the film possible. So our locations being donated, a huge portion of our camera and lens and lighting and grip package donated, to the project. Our crew working for much, much lower than their standard rate because they wanted to be a part of the project, things like that. So thinking creatively, thinking strategically about how to keep our budget low is a big part of what made the film successful, was trying to really squeeze those numbers down, but still maintain a product we were proud of and maintain a working environment for our crew that we felt like we could put our brand behind.
And just going back while you're talking about crowdfunding, and I'm like listening to you and thinking, okay, why was all that successful? It was the crowdfunding campaign that built this momentum and this energy, not just in Wilmington where our immediate, cast and crew and like community was, but like all across the country, friends and family and people who we'd never heard of before coming to the table to say, yes, women in film, yes, this story, whether it was the honey head of it all or the DV angle and the like emotional turmoil that our character is working through. It's like people cared about it for one of 2 reasons, or maybe a lot more, but those were like the major, pools of thought that people were buying into. That momentum, we set out to raise $50,000. We got a stretch goal and got $75K on Seed and Spark in 30 days. So there was just like an outpouring of yes, yes, and yes, I'll take my money. Yes, I'll buy the merch. Yes, I believe in this project. And it's kind of like groupthink, right? Like it's like peer pressure or positive peer pressure. People are like, I want to also be involved. Like this is happening. Yeah. This train is moving. I want to get on.
It's momentum.
That. It's momentum. And so it brought the investors, then it brought the crew, right? There's a buzz about town. Like it's North Carolina. It's not like every day there's a new indie feature coming out. Everybody wants to support that. And it was also the years of like us pouring into the community that everybody wanted to say, good job, and we support you on this and we want to help. And so, the vendor deals, we weren't asking. We didn't put our hand out and say, hey, can we have? They said, if you're doing a movie, we're not using this gear. Why don't you take it and shoot it on this camera? Use these lenses for free. We don't need them right now. And like all of that
That's
came
awesome.
to us because of the momentum. And so we didn't have an expectation that it would be easy or that we would get deals. We didn't ever ask for any favors, really. It was like people just bought into it. And we're so thankful. And we're constantly still shouting those people out and thanking them because we truly couldn't have made the movie as good as it was without every single person.
I think it is absolutely a combination of the honey head of it all, and as well as the topic, at least for this film. I will come back to the honey head of it all because I think that just to flash forward a bit, like your branding is just so intact that, and you mentioned that, right? You started building an audience, and what you're saying now, it reminds me. This is not a plug, but I have a new book coming out next year, and the publisher said this line of like, you start marketing your book the day you have the idea to write it. And I thought that was so simple, but also profound and changes a lot, because often people think like until you have it done or you're doing it. But it sounds like you all did a really good job of that. And that comes from understanding your audience and talking about it. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is like you're out there doing the work. It's kind of like what we talked about with the film festivals. It's just like on the pre-side of things, like, hey, we're doing this thing. Here's why. I mean, this buzz that happened, it doesn't happen if you don't start talking about it and start taking some action. Then, and you can't just hope that these magical collaborations and contributions happen, but they certainly don't happen unless you are kickstarting that momentum and out there going. So I applaud you both for that. And it's nice to see it actually happen. I love that so much that people are like, they're seeing what you're doing and they want to support it. And that's how it happens. So for anybody listening, I mean, I would just +1 that of just like, talk about it, put it out there, start working on it, and you will find the audience. I want to dive into the topic a little bit. You know, my mother was Cheyenne at one point. I mean, this is definitely a topic that I'm unfortunately super familiar with. Sounds like we share a common bond there. And I noticed something in the writing that I wanted to discuss. I think it was really done well in terms of the subtlety of it all. You're talking about these deep, dark topics and themes that are really important, but it wasn't like trauma porn, right? It wasn't like heavy-handed with these things. And I just wanted to know if that was like intentional and why, because for me personally, like I think the film as a story landed so much better because it wasn't that. Is that making sense? Do you see where I'm kind of going with that? I thought that was really nuanced and done really well.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that was very intentional and important going into the writing process, because so much of what you see in the media with domestic violence is when it's escalated already to the point of physical abuse. I think because it's more dramatically interesting, I guess, to people assume that, but that's unfortunately, you know what I mean? It's like when you have something that's very much like a physical indicator, you know, someone has a black eye, and not to diminish that experience, because that is a huge part of what people go through, like horrible physical abuse. But we really wanted to explore the progression and the escalation of DV, because in working with survivors and reflecting on our own experiences, we were like, it was really hard for us to pinpoint what is abuse, because we've only ever been shown physical abuse as the marker for domestic violence. So can we explore the subtleties, the gaslighting, the emotional control, the financial control, all the things that we've witnessed going into these processes, and the way that survivors experience the escalation of their abusers to the point of physical abuse? And how do we break that down and really just stay in that space? That was important to us, is that it never got out of control, because it was important for us to break down that stigma that abuse is only once like a fist is thrown, or someone's been shoved down, or there's like a physical indicator that something is happening. All of that abuse can be very invisible, and it's equally oppressive. And we need to start conversations around that, because it will help hopefully victims identify their situations, and then bystanders and allies identify that in other people, their friends and family that might be going through something that, because they're so entrenched in that experience, they can't even recognize for themselves yet. So that was really why it was important for us to look at that, so that it could start conversations of, and it has on the festival circuit. We've had people say, I felt really seen by this film. This made me feel seen in my experience, or I feel like I can now say, yes, I was in an abusive situation. I left before it got physical, but I feel validated now, saying that it felt like I was being abused, but emotionally abused. And we can take away the just in front of emotionally abused, trying to take that word out. No one's ever just experiencing emotional abuse or gaslighting. It is abuse. So being able to talk about that was really important.
And also, on the opposite end of the spectrum, people who have never experienced this, don't think they know anyone who's gone through this, maybe aren't from a small, poor town. They, at screenings like in Croatia or in Rhode Island, the guy in the seersucker suit who comes up to us afterwards saying, I always thought, why doesn't she just leave? And this movie changed my perspective. And now I understand what privilege
So
is.
good.
I understand that
Yep.
it's like, oh, she can't just go to college and get a degree and like build a life for herself, you know? And so there's no victim blaming. There's like so much empathy and sympathy for these characters. I think that people outside of the spectrum of DV or like who have ever had it touch their life in some way are also having experiences that are like transcendent through cinema, and they're able to just recognize things or just have a changed perspective from the film, and that's all we could ever hope for, you know. And like from an international perspective, I think that's just been really rewarding, and why I'm
So
so
cool.
excited for the film to get out. And
Yeah.
hopefully it will catch wind in these kind of communities and word of mouth. You know, we're in this kind of digital age where you know, people can just start talking about a movie that was either done really poorly or done really well. And we hope that the word gets out, you know, that you should watch this film for these reasons. And we've had people say college campuses should use this film as a teaching tool. You know, people should be able to
That's cool.
recognize relationship, like toxic relationships from this, because it is so subtle. And I think there's way more people who are Cheyenne than they even realize, you know?
I think that it's
I,
interesting too to think about Alex, the antagonist too. That was also very intentional, that he could be, some people just don't like him the whole time, but some people do find themselves feeling sympathetic towards him, and that was also intentional. In
yeah.
the cast, the writing and casting of that character, because I think that's also where it's important for the audience to not blame Cheyenne and fall into that victim blaming trap. And by making him charming and appear to love her and like physically, you know, kind of there with her at the beginning of the film, that was all kind of
Mm-hmm.
done to not make him come out right at the gate and have us hate him right away, because then the audience isn't really learning anything, or they might just be doing that. We might lose them through like our own kind of predisposed victim blaming bias. You know, we might lose them
Mm-hmm.
right away. So making sure that you understood the dynamic of the relationship and didn't hate Alex right away was also really important.
Totally. It's more realistic. I mean, it's like the anti-Hollywood effect where, you know, it's sleeping with the enemy and it's like a very clear, like murderous, you know, bad guy. And then the woman who, you know, is the victor for escaping. This is more authentic, as you've said, right? More realistic. And I love the point about why doesn't she just leave? God knows. I mean, that question is like the first question from anyone who's trying to come from the opposite perspective. And I think that weaving it through also, this is also very realistic, her vulnerability through the financial hardship, the grief that she was going through. Like often the oppressors tend to capitalize on those moments, and it's this weird, dark, traumatic web that you get like kind of, you know, woven into and can't escape. And so I thought that was important too, to feature all of this. These are things I saw firsthand growing up, you know. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to hit you with a belt one day, right? It is a kind of an evolution, and you could even see that Cheyenne, there was love there too. Right. I thought that, you know, I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was really well executed, and I'm glad that I was picking up on that, because I think the subtlety played really well. And you're telling me from your experiences and these anecdotes that it is landing with people because of that. So job well done. I think that was really important. We talked, I mean, this is the storytelling lab. So I often talk to screenwriters on the show, and we talk about story structure and things like that. I want to go back to something that we said earlier, talking about taking this. Well, we were kind of like talking about the feature that you're trying, or the short you're trying to turn into a feature that dies on, you know, page 60, which I empathize with that. I have been there. Talk to me about the structural approach of the story, especially expanding it from a short. Were there any models or formulas you tried to follow to flesh that out? Did you just completely start from scratch with the feature? How did you approach that from like a storytelling perspective?
It's funny because I just got done teaching 3 6-week screenwriting courses, and I'm gonna be like,
Nice, perfect.
I'm not gonna take my own advice at all that I spent like 6 weeks teaching people.
Or you didn't take your own advice.
didn't
Maybe
take
your
my own
advice came from how
Yeah,
your process was.
I write a lot more structurally and outline a lot more heavily after writing Imogene, but that film just poured out of me from a very instinctual standpoint. So I was not really following any sort of like I was not thinking about acts. I was not thinking about really anything except for what happens next to Cheyenne and how does she deal with these situations. It was very character driven from the beginning. And then on later drafts went back and kind of restructured things, thinking more editorially and how it would work to create suspense and things like that. So went back more analytically in later drafts. But where the short expanded from was, I guess, in a way, towards the end of Act Two, I guess, of where the feature sits now, which I find was shorts. It was a 7-page short. It was not very long at all. It was really a vignette and a true slice of life moment that I wrote as an acting exercise for Kristi and myself. I played the sister Janelle in the short film, and we just wanted to act together. So I wasn't really thinking about the way the world could expand, but it's a moment of figuring out what to do with the family estate and hinting at the fact that Cheyenne's character does have an abuser and that she's dealing with an unplanned pregnancy, which are not really spoilers, they're in the log line. So for anyone who's listening, but I realized that I had kind of written a climactic emotional moment between these sisters, so I had to go back pretty far to start over with Cheyenne and where she came from and how she got to this moment. That was the big question I was answering with writing the feature, and had written about like 19 pages and had 19 pages done for maybe like 6 months or 4 months or something like that, and just hadn't had time to sit down and really like pump out the rest of it. Again, because it was so personal, it was going to take a lot of digging down deep to bring out some of the themes. And then COVID hit. It was like the beginning of 2020 and COVID hit and all of our client work dried up and everyone was like, is it going to be 14 days or 14 years? We don't know. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, I was able to literally take a week of my life and do nothing for 7 days except for write. And I finished the first draft of the script. So that was like the good and bad of the COVID. And like, it was a gift though, to have like that enormous pause in April, 2020 to just be able to say, I literally have nothing else to do except for write this movie, finally finish it. So,
and the first draft is so different than what, obviously what ended up in the edit, but even the shooting draft. And it was probably another year of tweaking. And then Erika just like on a whim cut the first 10 pages. She just came to me and was like, I changed it and it got so much better. It got so much tighter. We actually had a false start where we thought we were going to shoot the movie the summer of 2021 and didn't get the financing in place. We were devastated. And then the script got so much better. It's like all of those little road bumps just made the movie better.
That's something I like to tell people. I'm like, if you ever get your timeline pushed back or it's taking longer than you think, keep working on the script. Don't you might have some discoveries. Keep watching movies, keep reading other scripts, keep kind of
getting coverage,
get coverage, get people's opinions. Like if you have if you can switch your mindset from thinking, oh man, this stinks, we have to wait a year, to like, we have another year to make it even better, then that's a good way to approach that, because it did get better. Hacking the first 10 pages off from a pacing standpoint was the best thing that ever happened to that script.
I don't think the film wouldn't have gotten a traditional distribution deal if we had shot the script that you wrote in 2021. I just think it would have been too much of a slow burn. And there's a place for that, I think, but like when you're going back to festival circuit and like programming indies, like length is important. Thinking about pacing is important. And I do think our film was programmable. I think it had a target audience and people who saw it loved it, but it's not like an action flick. You definitely need an attuned audience who's there to have an experience and they're not there to just be entertained, and so that's you get that in the festival circuit. And we're hoping to find that on the distribution circuit. It's definitely like people who want to have an emotional experience that are watching a movie.
And I think writing a protagonist too that it's hard because she is a victim of a lot of circumstances. I think it can be easy to fall into a trap where you end up having a passive protagonist. That was some early coverage that happened with the script, is that so much is happening to Cheyenne that she's really just being reactive, which was probably one of the hardest things to juggle with this script as a writer, because she doesn't have a lot of options. Do you know what I mean? It's hard for her to be active in her choices because she's so lacking in resources financially. It's like she doesn't have a car. It's like all of these things that she is really dependent on what happens externally to her, but making sure that she had an internal arc and that she did she did make decisions for herself, and was active in her own character development, I think was a big part of like the rewriting process in multiple drafts for this script. And originally she wasn't a musician. That was something that came in later drafts, which I think gave her a level of purpose and autonomy that the script needed, for people to connect with her and really care about her story. So, yeah, it was like the first draft came out, and then later going back was more addressed for like traditional, like paradigm structure and things like that.
So it probably took you a lot longer than it would today to write this movie.
It took a
In other words,
because you're kind of reverse engineering it. It's like you kind of just like it just kind of like the story just sort of hemorrhages out of you, and then you have to go back and make sure that it works. Do you know what I mean?
And a lot of people who are writing personal experiences, they might have that. They might have those same, I won't call them problems, but just like roadblocks that you have to navigate. And so this is good. It's good advice, just hearing the process.
How do you add things and dramatic elements that make it work as a screenplay rather than getting too tied up in how things actually happened? I had a couple writers in my class that are writing kind of autobiographical stories, and I think it was helpful to give feedback around, well, what if we kind of restructured it? I know this isn't how it actually happened, but this could potentially work better for like the cinematic medium, rather than thinking of it as a linear memoir. So I think that being able to go back and think about it, and then a lot of it came together in post too. Things got reordered in post as well. Lots of several scenes got cut, whole characters got cut from the movie in post. So it is really true what they say about like you're telling the story 3 times. Once when you write the script, once when you shoot it, once when you edit it. It's like this was very true for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, I want to spend a little bit of time on Honeyhead specifically. And I had mentioned this or alluded to this earlier. We talk a lot here on the show about branding. Obviously, that's a big part of storytelling as well. And I have to commend you all. I think that you've done such a great job of carving out that clear brand that Honeyhead is. And this is a generalized statement, but I think perhaps a lot of filmmakers or creators or storytellers that do the things that we like to do may not have that as dialed in. That's an assumption. That's a generalization, but you all do it really well. And so my question is, I want to talk about the business of filmmaking, what it means to be a professional filmmaker these days, what that looks like, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first, in terms of the brand, did you all at what point did you consciously look at what we want Honeyhead to be and represent and say, did you go through this process of these are our core values, this is what we stand for, therefore these are the types of projects that we're going to be involved in, even though it might be cool to do other things, this is a Honeyhead project or production because this is who we are? Because from the outside perspective, it looks like that was very clear and very intentional. So I'm interested in the process you all went through to identify that branding.
I'll say that it's been very organic. Is that what you're thinking right now? I'm trying to read Erika's mind, but really, I just went back the last 10 years while you were asking that question, and I checked milestone moments. And when we did check-ins like that, obviously we talk to each other about where we're going in the business, and we manifest a lot, and we have vision boards. We think about the big picture. But neither of us went to business school. Neither of us went to film school. And so every day we're constantly just figuring it out in the best way, but it's just the truth. And all of those decisions were never premeditated to my memory. It was just it just happened. And then we'd fall in step, and then we'd realize that it meant something to our success. And then we'd say, oh, okay, we can keep trusting our gut. It's really a gut check. It's a vibe check, who we bring into the hive, so to speak, the projects that we say yes to, the ones that we shepherd, like from an original IP standpoint. You know, from a business perspective, we have clients that, you know, we're doing client work for while we're pushing films through development, or we're doing production services for other movies that come to our, you know, they come to us and they say, hey, can we get this off the ground? Can we pay you to produce this? Can you crew up for us? Can you find locations? And one of the first things we say is, are there women above the line, or is this a strong female lead? Because if not, we're not really interested, because that's part of the Honeyhead branding, right?
Right.
And so let's say we're doing another feature for someone, and you know, it comes with like the caveat that we're going to crew up for them. We're definitely putting 50% or more female filmmakers below the line, like, because that's our job as producers, and it's part of the branding of Honeyhead. And it goes without saying that, like, every project that we do that we're going to produce on our own, we're going to bring those people to the table, women and minorities. It's just who we're comfortable making movies with, because there's a mutual respect there. And the men that we choose to collaborate with, they just get down with that, and they get it, and they're excited too about the creative work that we're putting out, and the energy, and like how collaborative our sets feel, and that they're just a safe space for creation and for, you know, doing creative things together. It's like the big dream, right? I don't feel that it was like premeditated. I don't know if you have a different memory. It's hard to think back 10 years ago, but even like down to the name of Honeyhead and all of that is just like a stroke of luck. It's like really, it's something people need to be thinking about, because it worked for us. You should think about it for yourself. But I can't say that we were like wise enough back then to like think about all of this.
I think that it comes with an amazing amount of like bee and honey branding, and the hive and all of that we've been able to capitalize on. That wasn't really, we weren't thinking about that when, you know, calling the company Honeyhead Films back in the day. But I think about like how many bee gifts we get now, and everyone's like excited about it. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. It's like everyone wants to gift us things, and they're like, how about some honey, you know? And I'm like, I love that. I love that the brand has turned into something that people care about and they want to contribute to and participate in. But it wasn't necessarily something we planned on, but it became very clear very quickly what people were resonating with around the brand.
Yeah.
And we wanted to run with that, you know, and it aligned also morally with what we wanted to do as business owners as well.
Yeah. Well, I think what's funny is like you're actually giving the best branding lesson of all, and it's not some exercise or formula to follow, but rather leaning into what organically and authentically emerges from you all, because it's not like by happenstance. It's because that's what you two stand for, right? It's who you two are. And that organic collaboration that you all have, that's why you're partners. So I think for any business, startup, film production company, whatever, that's important to understand, like, well, who are we? What do we care about? What are the stories that we care to tell? Which is why when we were chatting, I don't know if we had started recording at that point, about some of the screenplays that I was writing, like the one that we talked about, I was like, yeah, that might actually be an opportunity for collaboration perhaps one day, because I see the brand very clearly, and the other two probably not so much. So whether it was something that premeditated or not, it exists and it exudes, and that is why that audience is, and we're coming back to that word too, right? Audience. I mean, that's why your supporters, I think, are so strong, and it is something I think people should follow. In terms of the business of being a filmmaker, of having a production company, and you just, Kristi, alluded to this with like, we also do this, and we, you know, I know you both are kind of multi-hyphenates. I think that for indie filmmakers, you kind of have to be these days. Again, thinking about that person who's like, I want to do what they're doing. What advice do you give someone in terms of the entrepreneurial aspect of creating a film production company? Because I'm going to make an assumption is like, it's probably not just doing the films that you want to do, like the ones that you write and direct only. because those are projects
Not
sometimes
yet
that take
anyway,
10 years, right?
Yeah.
Right,
That's
not
the
yet.
end
Right, right,
goal.
right.
And then you have to be able to keep the lights on and pay the bills and do the overhead while
Right.
you're
How do we
building
do
towards
that?
that goal. Yeah. I'm going to say something and then I'll pass it to Erika, but something we learned maybe a few years in was that it's okay to say no to things as an entrepreneur. It's okay to say, actually, I don't want to do that kind of project. And it's not feast or famine, and just believe that there will be a way for you to translate your skills as a filmmaker to client work, but to like pour your heart into it and to actually be able to like love a part of what you're doing and not shoot real estate videos if that's not your thing, or like don't shoot weddings just because somebody wants you to and you have a camera. Like if it's not feeding your soul, you need to gut check every couple months and say like, is this actually counteractive? Because yes, I might need to, pay the bills while I'm getting through development, but like if it's sucking your soul dry of every ounce of creativity, and at the end of the day you don't even want to go work on the screenplay or talk about how to get it produced with your partner because you're both so stressed out with the client work, then you need to figure out another avenue into like making ends meet as a filmmaker. And really having like an abundance mindset is what changes the pace for us. I think sometimes, like you said earlier, the industry being kind of upside down, it can be a scary place, like especially with like
Right.
AI and like all of this. I mean, when we started Imogene, that wasn't even like an issue. We weren't thinking about robots taking editing jobs and all of that going down. So it's like it's hard. It's hard to not feel like you have to say yes to everything. But that's just a piece of advice I think we came to realize like maybe 3 years into Honeyhead. We were like,
Yeah.
it's okay to say no. And the things you say yes to are what you're going to attract more of. And so we started saying, yes, we'll produce your short film. Yes, we'll produce your documentary. Yes, we'll produce your feature film. And we just stopped putting it out there that we were doing real estate or weddings or whatever it is we were doing in the really early ages, just to like the eras of Honeyhead, just like pay rent and do the things like,
Yeah.
Purchase equipment, like build up an arsenal of all that. We pay contractors, like all of that kind of thing. But now I feel like the projects that come to us, they are narrative focused or they're documentary focused. And that's
Yep.
what we're attracting. That's what we put out there, that we produce. And I think the more you say yes to the things you want to do, the more they're going to come to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, kind of trying to stay away from that scarcity mindset and always checking in with yourself. What are people asking for from you? I guess, that's something that we always try to check in around. We had a really fun season this past spring teaching a bunch of workshops, an acting workshop. I did screenwriting workshops, and that has been really fulfilling, like from a soul standpoint, but also, feeding back and offering things to the community that they find value in. Because we were just trying to, think outside the box, and we were like, what are some things that as a business we can offer, and where are our people and our audience really needing things from us, and is it not necessarily the like one-off commercial project, is it more of like an overarching like brand storytelling project, or is it education? And we found that there was a huge gap for education around indie film, and a demand for it in our community. And we were like, well, why don't we try to create some structure around that and figure out how we might be able to fill that demand? And we had an overwhelmingly positive response to that. So I think also always realizing as you're evolving as a filmmaker, what your community or your client base might need from you could shift. Shift from all of the like, we had like a fun niche back in the early days of Honeyhead where we were doing stuff for like the health and wellness community in Wilmington all the time. Like all the yogis and like the fitness folks like hired Honeyhead to do videos for them, and it was super fun. It was like we kind of were like the word of mouth, folks around with like the small business yoga studio, small kind of, wellness community. And that was a season for us, and there's just been all these seasons for us as film producers who work more in a client space in addition to the narrative space. And it's been really fun. And I'm enjoying like the educational space that we're in now.
And I think what you're saying, Erika, about the educational space, it's still feeding into the narrative arc, right? It's like we're teaching acting classes. They're narrative acting classes, right? We're doing story structure and script writing. Like it's for narrative films. And so it's attracting more narrative work to Honeyhead. And we're not as scattered as business owners because we're still just focused on one subject matter. We're not off like shooting yoga videos anymore. That would kind of confuse your brain. Your creative brain is like trying to like go find financing for the next dystopian action thriller, but you're also like cutting fitness videos together. It's like it doesn't not work. So you have to figure out how to find synergy in the passion and like the lucrative things while you're in the middle of development. Yeah.
That is absolutely perfect. I love that so much, and it's very true. And I think, ladies, you're being modest, but I think you might be branding experts. I gotta say. You keep saying that none of this is intentional, but it's so clear. Like it's all driving back to it. I think
I think
you're locked in. You're absolutely locked in.
Yeah. And people, it's like it's like the keynote speaking thing, the inspirational talks, like we get called for that kind of thing. So I know it's our story that people are invested in. The story of Honeyhead is like the most important one. And I don't want to lose sight of that. It's just, how do you make money telling your story? I mean, we should take your workshop, then we would know. Right?
I know somebody.
I literally just quoted his website. It's like, I didn't mean to, but that's so funny. Yeah, we should talk after this.
A lot of what you have said here in the last like 5 or 10 minutes is the stuff I struggle with too. I'm completely inspired by the journey of this film, but also the journey of Honeyhead. I am one of those that is attracted to the story that you all have. So whether you accidentally did it, organically did it, or whatever, it's working. So job well done. The movie was excellent. I'm really stoked about all the stuff you all are working on. It's incredible and very inspiring. Before we go, let us know where and when the people can see this film for themselves.
Absolutely. We're releasing on Amazon Prime June 27th, probably like at midnight. I don't know exactly the time, but please add it to your watch list. It helps. All of that algorithm things, those are real. The clicks, the plays, the shares. You can review the film on IMDb, Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes, all that good stuff. It's also available on Fandango at Home, Cox, Xfinity. It'll be on cruise ships and airlines. We don't have as much, direct linkage to all that, but we can send you the link if you wanted to put it in your show notes of where they can they can tune in on Amazon. So it'll be next Friday, 10 days away. Super excited. And please connect with us on social media. We're pretty active. The film itself, A Song for Imogene, has a page. It's Imogene Movie. And then, of course, at Honeyhead Films, you can find both of us and follow the story, follow the journey, and see what's next for the people who are just going with the flow.
I also want to say, and then I'm going to stop giving you all compliments. Sorry to say, the reels that you all do, like, they're so good, like for still staying in the filmmaking space, but like they look like professional content creators are doing them. So I love the creative angle that you take with the reels and TikToks you're making. So all of it's working, ladies. All of it's working.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I'm glad I played just a teeny tiny role in the festival circuit for you.
It led to this, which is the coolest part of all of it. Thank you.
It's pretty crazy, right?
Today. Yeah, it's been awesome, and just to know what you're doing and like in the space, and that we have similar roots and all of that. It's like we'll continue to champion you and follow what's up. And like North Carolina's just got to stick together. We're putting it on the map.
Agree.
Like, let's keep going.
Wholeheartedly agree, and I can't wait to follow what you all are doing next. And I hope the opportunity rises sincerely for us to collaborate on something that would be pretty cool.
Let's do it.
My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.